future is, what we make it, we can make it.
Jesse, welcome back to Real Vision. You were on, I think, two and a half years ago. I think Tour interviewed you.
Yeah, we did that in San Francisco, and I remember because we did it in this building that was street level, and there was like a motorcycle going by every other minute, and we had to do so many retakes. It was insane.
Where are you now? Where are you talking from today?
I'm in Los Angeles today.
Oh, okay, great. So, look, for some people who haven't seen that original interview, I'd just like to spend a bit of a short time, because I like to do it with everybody, just a little bit of their journey, into the crypto world and just where they came from. Because what's great about this space, it's not like the Wall Street space where basically everybody did the same thing. It's super eclectic.
So, yeah. The space is growing. The diversity of participants is growing. We're seeing, just in the last few months with all of the insanity happening in the traditional markets and with all the money printing and everything, I think there's a newfound interest among the more conservative traditional investor class, who's now kind of realizing that maybe something that can't be printed to infinity could actually have some value. So signups across the board, though, have been up many multiples over the last few months. So I think just broadly, people are starting to take more notice of Bitcoin.
What was the story that got you into Bitcoin in the beginning? Because it's always a narrative that gets us in. What was the narrative that got you in?
Yeah, so I had just randomly read about Bitcoin somewhere on some blog on the internet. And prior to Kraken, I had a company in the virtual goods industry selling World of Warcraft gold and RuneScape gold and Diablo items and all of this stuff. The company was called Loot. We did like 20 different games at one time. And, that was from 2001. I started that while I was in college. And we just, we're already basically in the business of virtual currency. And so I read about Bitcoin. I was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe this is another virtual currency we can just sell on the website. We had an e-commerce platform, with everything else. But as I got more into it, I read the white paper. This is 2011. There was already a lot of stuff on the Bitcoin Talk forums. There'd already been quite a bit written about it. And at that time, you could actually read everything that there was. These days, you just can't keep up, no matter how hard you try. So I just went down the rabbit hole and read everything that there was about it and became much more intrigued with the philosophical implications of it, the social implications, the fact that it was completely decentralized. And I was aware of other kind of attempts at alternative currencies like e-gold in the past, which had ultimately been shut down by the government. And I always thought that, an independent global currency would be great to have. And we were already aware that people were using virtual currencies in the video game world. People were trading World of Warcraft gold for real life stuff, trading it for cash or trading it for car repairs or whatever. It was a real store of value for people.
Gaming led all of this thing. I mean, it was,
Absolutely.
digital assets have proven value in the gaming world.
Completely. And even before that, I was a domain hoarder. And domains are sort of the original NFT. They're the original digital good that can be worth millions of dollars for one domain. So yeah, I guess I've kind of always been intrigued by this idea of a virtual stores of value and digital assets. And Bitcoin just had all these other great things about it. And I always thought World of Warcraft had millions of players, but you couldn't ever have it couldn't be a reliable global currency because Blizzard Entertainment could shut down your account at any time for any reason they want. They own your account. You don't really have any right to the assets that are stored on your account. And in fact, they did regularly shut down accounts, and you would lose everything. So that was one impediment to something like that becoming more broadly used as a currency. But Bitcoin, because it didn't have the risk of any one entity just shutting it down, seemed great. It also didn't have the problem of there being a gatekeeper to getting on the platform. You didn't have to get KYC. You didn't have to have a good credit score. You didn't have to have the approval of some authority to participate in the network, which was awesome. You know, and when we think about the unbanked people of the world, you know, often what comes to mind is like, oh, that's just people in rural India, rural Africa that are unbanked. But the reality is like 22% of households in the United States are unbanked. Most of the people in the United States under the age of 18 are unbanked. And so what do, you know, especially in a digital age where we're buying more and more things online, what do you do if you don't have a credit card or you don't have a PayPal account? You know, how do you participate in this digital economy? And Bitcoin solves so many problems for so many people around the world. That's a big part of what got me into it.
So why take the giant leap of starting an exchange?
Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest business in the world. I wouldn't recommend anyone take it on. Not just saying that, you know, to protect my my position, but you know, it's a really tough business. It's just gotten more tough over time. When we first got into it, it wasn't really clear kind of what the regulatory situation was going to be. We assumed that for a while it would be just like World of Warcraft gold, which was completely unregulated, still is completely unregulated. But in 2013, FinCEN in the United States, you know, gave guidance that basically they were treating this like any other currency, basically, and you were going to have to abide by all of the banking rules effectively to trade in it. So anyway, I got started with it because of back in early 2011, I was trading on another exchange called Mt. Gox, the infamous Mt. Gox. If you've been in the space, you know, everyone knows someone who got wrecked on Mt. Gox at some point. They're still in bankruptcy, but I basically, you know, back in June of 2011, Mt. Gox got hacked for the first time that we know of. I happened to go out there to try to help them get back on their feet. Coming out of that, realized, you know, while Mt. Gox was down, they were like 99.9% of the trading volume at the time, back in 2011. Realized that, you know, they were down for like 2 weeks, and during that time, there was no price discovery. People were freaking out. Merchants couldn't take payments because they needed to convert it instantly. There were all these issues, so I kind of thought, well, there ought to be another exchange. We can't have just one exchange. And I also wasn't totally sure that like Mt. Gox was going to be that one exchange that was really going to execute really well and do everything, you know, the way that it needed to be done. And we kind of had this view that in order for Bitcoin really to become mainstream, there had to be more industry players that were really taking the business seriously and that were willing to invest in educating regulators and educating law enforcement and being that real solid example in the space that could do things the right way, that could make everyone comfortable, that could make banks comfortable, because that's really what it's all about. I mean, what it's going to take to get more people using Bitcoin is you've got to have this bridge between the legacy system and the new system. You know, people need a way to buy Bitcoin, and you can't get a bank account if you can't show the bank that you're compliant and that you're doing everything the right way, and that, you know, in most cases we've got way better controls than even the banks that we deal with. So doing everything in a legit way and being kind of slow and methodical, putting security first, having great customer service, you know, thinking of clients coming to us as really like, these are new people coming into Bitcoin, not just coming to Kraken, but coming into the space for the first time, and they might be scared. They might have read a lot of horror stories about people losing money and everything. So, you know, we try to be a really kind of solid, reliable shepherd for them coming into the space, just to make everyone as comfortable as possible all around. Because, you know, I think really what is suppressing the price of Bitcoin is just sort of this, the idea of risk, or the uncertainty about, you know, what could Bitcoin be, or what could happen, you know, to my Bitcoin. And I think that to the extent we can reduce uncertainty about it, I think we'll see the price go up.
I mean, I must admit, you know, I opened a Kraken account a while ago, and the customer support was amazing, because I'm complicated, because I live in the Cayman Islands, everybody hates us, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, they were really good. You know, because they realize that it's like, oh God, okay, what do I do here? Because you're used to going into a bank and opening a bank account, and this is a whole different experience, and everyone's worried about it, And you're right. I mean, you have to build that kind of trust with people.
Yeah, being in the Caymans, I'm sure you didn't have an easy time, and we often hear from the compliance team. They're just like, these guys in this particular country are such a headache. Their banks don't produce these documents, or their corporate office of corporations or whatever doesn't produce any documents or whatever. And we're just like, look, we've got to kind of take a localized approach to it. Everyone in the world wants to get into Bitcoin. Our job is to help people get into Bitcoin. It's not to be picky and only take the easy cases. We really want to build that bridge for the whole world to get on.
So when did you start Kraken, and how many people are you now?
We started in July of 2011, so we'll be 9 years old next month.
Wow.
And we are, I just checked, it was 1,126 people as of this morning.
Does that not terrify you? You were the gamer, and now suddenly you've got 1,100 people, and you spend your whole life having to deal with compliance and regulatory issues, as opposed to the kind of cyberpunk who's changing the world. Well, you are, but it's just a hard way of doing it, right?
Yeah, I try to look at it that way. I try to remind myself of that. Often the right thing to do is not easy, and it's definitely not what I thought I was signing up for. But it's like somebody's got to do it. We can't rely on the big banks to do this. So somebody's got to do it. I pray every day for someone else to step up and say that they want to be the CEO of Kraken and they're going to do a much better job, and I can go take a vacation. But it hasn't happened yet.
But what's important is, right, why I got into the space is I was in Spain in the banking crisis in 2012. I was kind of involved in the financial crisis, and I pretty much knew we were fucked. This whole situation between, and you and I were talking off camera, there's that mix between the social elements of so many people being left out. There's the whole elements of nobody really understanding what's going on with themselves or understanding what's going on with the economy. All of this, that event horizon we all came part of, whether people came from that libertarian, technologist viewpoint, or you came from the disgruntled Wall Street guy, whatever, we were all coming towards this one narrative. And it feels like it's kind of arrived, right?
Absolutely.
Everything we feared, or this whole parallel financial system was being built for, is for now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was for 2008. And I think Satoshi thought it was for that time, and maybe saw an even bigger bubble coming and an even worse outcome coming, given how we handled the last financial crisis. Bailing everyone out kind of just delayed the inevitable, allowed this extremely fragile system to continue hobbling along, and now we're in the midst of a real economic crisis. Money printing is out of control with no end in sight. I think that Bitcoin, for me, is an obvious way to kind of step out of that system and de-risk and have something that is real and finite and predictable, and over the short term is very volatile, but over the long term has proven to be an extremely great store of value.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still the best performing asset of all time, and it's only been going for a while.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
I mean, it's an extraordinary thing, and it just feels that it's becoming more and more relevant. I mean, there's a US dollar crisis going on right now, shortage of US dollars, and countries, it's now gone to central banks talking about digital currencies, which are different, but it's creating the on-ramps and off-ramps to the digital world that you envisaged, or the gaming world was already 15 years ago, where everything was digital. It feels like that's all coming. If the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, says, oh, well, we can't operate in this dollar system any longer, we have to do something else. Well, that's everybody now trying to change the system, from the Bank of England through to you and I,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be great to see some sort of international currency distributed by the UN that's gold backed, or some sort of asset backed international currency or something. I think the United States especially gets a lot of power from being able to distribute its dollars around the world, and to be able to have everyone else who's long dollars, holding dollars in their vault, absorb the brunt of the inflation that they're pouring out. So I would be surprised if the United States or any other country kind of willingly converts to any sort of asset-backed currency.
They're never going to do it.
I think you got to hit rock bottom to go that way, or people just, maybe it never happens, and hopefully people kind of step out of that sinking ship and into Bitcoin, or something like it, or gold, before the thing goes completely under. I think that the idea of countries issuing these sort of Fed coins, or just tokenized national currencies, which still have all the same problems of money printing and everything, but they're tokenized now, just sort of like officially sanctioned, tethers or USDC. I think that this is going to be another stepping stone. It's going to open up another door for people to get into crypto. It'll sort of be the gateway drug, if you will. It'll teach people how to use tokens. And it's just a quick hop from there, once they've got their token wallet on their phone, to go into something more real like Bitcoin.
So how do you see this whole space developing over the next 5 years? I mean, this space moves at lightning speed and also doesn't move at all. Everyone's waiting for the kind of consumer apps, and they take forever, but everybody's building them. Where do you see this space overall in its broadest context in the next 5 years?
Really good question. Things have moved a lot slower than I thought they would have. I thought back in 2011, like, the world was going to be on Bitcoin, in the next 3 years, and we were all going to be driving around in UFOs and stuff. But it turns out things take a lot longer than you would expect. I think a lot of it has to do with the regulatory situation. In the United States especially, there's a lot of uncertainty still. And I think that's keeping a lot of participants out of the market, especially the bigger money that may have some regulatory requirements to only trade or only transact in specifically regulated assets. So I think how the regulatory situation plays out will be important to the next 5 years. Countries are taking very different approaches to it. We try to take a localized approach to the business, so we have different compliance rules all over the world. But for Bitcoin, in the asset class broadly, I think that we'll continue to see more adoption. I'm hoping that the technical components of it, the sophistication, continues to fade away into the background, and it just becomes more like, just an app, or like a PayPal app, that you don't even really think about all of the machinations, the complexity of like what happens in the dollar system, behind the scenes with the Federal Reserve, and then this banking interchange and all of this crazy stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You don't need to know about it. You just need to know, like, I have a PayPal account. I can send money to my friend through PayPal, and like, it's the easiest experience ever. And one added benefit is you don't have to trust PayPal, who can lock your account at any time. They're notorious for doing that kind of stuff. It's just sort of hopefully like that, but with extra benefits. I think the user experience is something we really got to work on. And as you said, there are a lot of people working on it. And I think it's just that getting it to be just dead easy so your grandma can do it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I was talking to a few other CZ and a few others about this. Is one of the issues I have is the KYC part of it. Mm-hmm. It costs you a fortune. It costs everybody a fortune. It costs all the banks a fortune.
Yep. I'm
not sure why, and I spoke to Vinny Lingo about this earlier today, I'm not sure why somebody hasn't created a centralized but decentralized, i.e. a wallet that has all of your storage in, that everybody buys into. Because it'll collapse everybody's costs. Because you know what it's like. You go and open a bank account, you need KYC. Open a crypto account, KYC. You buy a toothbrush now, you need KYC. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And once somebody solves that, then it's a lot easier to move around, open stuff, close stuff.
Yeah, it would be nice if you could have just some sort of, if the government could issue you an ID, and I don't know, there are all kinds of reasons why maybe the government shouldn't be the one that kind of controls your digital identity.
Yeah.
But, they already give you a passport. They already give you a social security number. They already have control over your movements in and out of the country. It'd be nice if you could have some sort of official token or a way of signing, a message for yourself digitally that proves you are who you are, that you could just take around. And yeah, instead of giving everyone the same set of 20 different documents, you just produce your token or produce your signature, and everyone knows, okay, this guy's already been vetted by the government or vetted by, the post office, since they don't have anything else to do these days, or,
Yeah,
some entity that that is kind of universally able to sign off on this.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like, these simple things need to be solved, and then it becomes much easier for other people to adopt this whole space.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
where are you seeing the fastest growth? So I mean, you're global. Where are you seeing differences? Where are people adopting it? What are the different behavior patterns you're seeing across the world?
Yeah, usually we see spikes in adoption coming from countries that are having problems with their currencies or their economies, or where there's been some sort of a negative kind of regulatory action or a bail-in type of situation. That's where, like Cyprus was, many years ago, there's a bank bail-in. We had like a flood of applications coming from Cyprus at the time. Guys coming from Venezuela. The problem is usually in these countries with failing financial systems, there are strict monetary controls, and it's really hard for these guys actually to get money out, and they rely heavily on local brokers, who also have this problem of just dealing with like tons of cash, and they somehow need to get cash back into Bitcoin to sell more Bitcoin. So it's like these areas of the world where you're seeing, the people really feel the effects of financial problems in the system. And then it's generally the countries that have just really great payment rails, where we have bank accounts domestically, the United States, Europe, where people generally have more wealth, more money to risk, I guess, to invest in things, who might be more tech savvy, who can pass KYC. So those are kind of our clients. But we have clients who are local brokers as well, who are the guys on the ground in Venezuela or the guys on the ground, in Africa somewhere. And I think one of the jobs of the global exchange is to provide, price discovery and liquidity to those guys. We can't be all over the world on the ground everywhere. And it's great that there are these brokers that kind of cover the last mile that really get Bitcoin to their local.
Yeah, and those guys are always smart. They figure out how to get around the rules, how to get money in and out, how to get the remittance payments is sorted out. So if their kid is working and living in a different country, they can get money into their parents. Those guys are always smart. They're hustlers. They know how to get it sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you seeing the growth of the various kind of cryptos, including stable coins? How's that all changing in your business?
There haven't been a lot of big developments in the, I would say, like the coins outside of the top 10. There was a big explosion of coins end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and there was all this hype in the market. That kind of died off. Most of those projects lost like 95% of their value or collapsed entirely and shut down. The stable coins are the hot new thing. I mean, not so much as an investment. The job of them is to just sort of maintain parity with whatever they've got in the vault. And in the case of Tether or USDC, they claim to have these dollars one for one.
Nobody's sure.
In a bank account or something, or somewhere in a vault somewhere, or at least dollar equivalents, quote unquote, whatever that means. But it seems like people trust that the money is there, or they just don't care, or they think they're going to be out. They're not going to be the last one holding the bag in the end.
So you sound pretty skeptical. But there are some more proven entities now coming into that space, I guess.
Yeah. I think USDC is one example of which is led by Circle, which is taking a very professional approach to this. I think it's super solid. Personally, I would trade it 1-for-1 with the dollar. I don't really discount USDC in my mind. I think it's basically digital dollars that might as well be issued by the Federal Reserve. Of course, there's some counterparty risk there. They could somehow get hacked, or they could still somehow collapse. But I think it's basically digitized dollars, and I think that it's also going to be a gateway for merchants who want to accept crypto, or who get deplatformed by Visa or PayPal, who don't have another way to take payment, and maybe who don't want to bear the risk of holding Bitcoin, maybe even for an hour. So they'll take payment in USDC or Tether or DAI, or something that is less volatile than Bitcoin, and closer to a 1-to-1 redemption with the dollar.
What's your view on Libra and what's going to happen with that? Because it could be big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have a ginormous user base built in that they could bootstrap this thing with. They seem to have changed their approach a few times. I think they're probably realizing that maybe they should have just done this rather than asking permission for it. And I'm not sure what the product is going to be at the end of the day when they come out with it. I think if it is some sort of basket, asset-backed currency, I think that's great, unless it's mostly backed by fiat currencies, and then I wouldn't see it as something I want to hold.
Yeah, from what I heard originally, I thought it was a breakthrough, because they were saying it was going to be dollars plus euros and yen and RMB. So in which case, the dollar's not the denominator,
Right.
so it should move up and down with like global money supply or something. So at least it's more stable as a start. And you'd imagine that if they do that, when there's no reason why Kraken couldn't create their own now basket currencies, of which Bitcoin's part of it. Before you know it, you slowly start changing the whole world towards harder currencies, because the choices, people will always go to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sophisticated user would probably prefer just to own Bitcoin and Ether and whatever is in that basket individually. I think the basket is probably appealing to the less sophisticated investor who.
It's also really appealing to people like mining companies, right? Because they've got this problem with dollar debts, dollar cash flows, and the dollar is volatile. If you're a South African, because the rand is so volatile, or if you're a Venezuelan, or if you're a Brazilian, they've got nightmares with this stuff. But if you have this basket currency as like a global currency, it helps a lot. And if it's digital, and Facebook creates something that has huge adoption, well, that only helps the whole space again.
For sure. I think it could be amazing. And I think it would be widely used as a form of payment. I still worry about how centralized it's going to be. Is Facebook just creating another PayPal with, a basket token of fiat currencies?
It sounds like it, right?
Kind of does, yeah. So in that way, it's not that interesting. If you can take it outside of the Facebook ecosystem and you can custody it on your own wallet, with your own private keys, and you can transfer it to another user without Facebook's permission, I think that's still pretty great. I think it's not Bitcoin, but it's halfway there.
So what are you guys doing to get the kind of more sophisticated institutional investor into the space? Because as you said, this was a retail revolution. It was kind of the people, and people knew that this gave them an opportunity. But the institutions have been much slower. What are you guys doing to try and bring that space together?
Yeah, for the institutions, it's a lot of education. They have a lot of fears. They have their own stakeholders that they are reporting to, and I think it's always easier for them to just say that they didn't do something because it was too risky, versus do something that is risky and then it blows up, and then they have to explain why they went out on a limb to invest in this crazy asset. But I think more people like Paul Tudor Jones, of that caliber, coming in and saying, our followers, and they don't want to stick their neck out and bet on something